Hey, good afternoon, everyone. This is Mark from Right Line Trading, and I'm just going to check the questions box and make sure that you can see the slides and that you can hear me okay. So if you can type a yes into the chat box, if you can hear me and if you can see the slides, I would really appreciate it. Okay, great. Thank you, James, John, Alan, Victor, William, Mary, Andrea. Okay, all right. So we're ready to start. Now, the topic today is small cap biotech blockbuster stocks. Now, everybody talks about catching these small cap biotechs. Many of them have the potential to go up 200 to 300% if you know when to get in. So actually, some of the tougher things are knowing when to close, but that's what we're going to be reviewing today. Now, there's going to be very little technical analysis involved. These are all fundamentally driven small cap biotechs. And the key fundamentals that we look at is the announcement of the FDA's decision on their approval or denial of the medication. We know the date that the FDA is going to make their decision, and based on a huge amount of analysis, we're going to decide whether or not that we want to take that trade. I'm going to show you exactly how the system works, and actually it's not very much of a system. It's all based on a tremendous amount of study and analysis by myself and 3 professors of medicine at the University of Miami School of Medicine. And we have done a really outstanding job in picking the right stocks and getting us in. And I'm going to show you our yearly track record, 2022, 23 year to date. And if you stay to the end, I'm going to give you 2 trades that have not yet hit their PDUFA dates. They're called PDUFA dates, which we'll discuss, and that you can trade if you like, whether or not you come aboard or not. So I would urge you to stay to the end to at least catch those stocks, because they have a really, really great potential for yielding really nice gains. Now, I'm going to start by just letting everyone know that all signals and trading opportunities that we provide are for educational purposes only. We are not licensed money managers. And everyone should understand also that participating in trading involves substantial risk, and you should never trade more than you can afford to lose. That's really a hard and fast rule that I adhere to. Now, I just wanted to show you quickly our Right Line Trading team that has really grown substantially. A lot of new people have come aboard. And we've really created a small army of really, really talented people. I know you all know Rory. If you've been aboard, you know Sergio, you know me, I'm Mark Sachs, and our new chief is Mark Miller. Now, just a little bit about myself. I graduated from an Ivy League university, the University of Pennsylvania. I got a master's degree in applied mathematics. After I graduated summa cum laude with honors. I was inducted into the Phi Beta Kappa Society, and it was always my goal in life to do teaching and research. So I applied to a number of universities, and ultimately wound up staying in Philadelphia, which is where I did all my training, and became a full-time professor at Jefferson University. While there, I published 15 peer-reviewed articles in top-tier journals. I was an associate professor, and I taught an enormous number of undergraduate and graduate students. I've always considered myself to be a scientist, a teacher, and an academician. It was actually after I left my position at Jefferson that I decided to focus on trading. But while there, I did a huge amount of work. I was an invited speaker internationally in many countries, an invited speaker in many cities domestically. And I believe over the course of the last 12 years with Rightline that I've mentored over 30,000 traders. Many of them one-on-one, most of them in small groups. We have a big educational training session coming up on Monday for members only. Now, if you're looking for the holy grail of trading options trading, I honestly believe this is as close as you will ever get. I mean, there really is no actual holy grail. You know, we're never going to get 100% winners. But I'll tell you, in past years, we've approached it, and I'm going to show you our track record for 2023. Now, I get emails all the time that show me headers like breakthrough strategy produces 140% gain in one trade, 1,500 to 15,000 and change in just a few weeks. He proves it with a 951% increase. I don't even know what that means. Game-changing option strategy that take your portfolio to new heights. Everyone has an options hack. Everyone's broken in options code. They just don't exist. There are no hacks. There's no special code. That Black-Scholes equation in the way that options are traded, you simply have to use the rules that the options provide you, the information that they give you based on all the Greeks, and that's all that you can do. There's no easy way to trade profitably, but I'm going to show you what I believe is the best way. So consider all of that background noise. And if you're going to chase these things, you're ultimately going to wind up being exceedingly disappointed. Now, the strategy that we use, now most of the trades are going to be announced as an options trade. Occasionally, the options chain is going to be inert. We're simply going to have no traders using options. And in that particular case, we're going to have to trade a stock. I'm going to show you one of them that I was going to give you as a third trade that we closed out for just under a 50% gain on a $1 stock. So occasionally, there was no one trading the options. The stock essentially was too cheap, and open interest on every strike price on every expiration date was 0. So we're not going to trade those. Essentially, the strategy is based on an enormous amount of background study and mathematical optimization. Now, we trade with up to a 91% win rate. Now, we're not trading at 91% so far this year, but we're not that far behind. And I'm going to show you every single trade that we took this year. I'm obviously not going to discuss it in any detail, but I'm going to show you our track record. Now, it's really sort of a formula that we use between myself and the 3 professors of medicine in the School of Medicine at the University of Miami that provide investors with the potential for us to deliver you an enormous amount of success in any market environment. So if you're here to learn about options trading, to learn about an options hack or some kind of options code, you're going to be disappointed. If you're here to get a great way to trade the markets and a great way to make money, I'm telling you, you're going to be exceedingly satisfied. Now, we look at small cap biotechs, and these are all catalyst-driven stocks. We know when that catalyst is going to come. It's going to be when the FDA gives the thumbs up or thumbs down to their medicine. Many of these are small cap biotechs with no medicines that have yet been approved by the FDA. So when they get their first medicine approved, obviously the stock is going to fly. Many of them have a very small float. So when they do get a positive catalyst event, institutional traders pile in and these stocks just fly. Now, since we know the date when the catalyst is going to come out, and we're not going to trade anything with much under a 95% chance of approval for their medicine, we're going to be in way before the herd, and we're going to ride that stock up strong. Optimally, we're going to be in with options, so we have leverage on our position. If we can't, we're going to be in on a very, very cheap stock. Now, I just wanted to do a quick evaluation because you and I have all used technical analysis to look at our trades. Now, we know technical analysis has value, but its positive predictive value is really, you know, it's really never been analyzed on a statistical basis, but you know that areas of support and resistance fail, rising and falling triangles fail, consolidation sometimes breaks in the wrong direction. So, I mean, here's a great area of support on this stock. This happens to be Albemarle. It's not a small cap, but all stocks really trade the same. You can see that if you traded off this area of support, you would have gotten a huge loser. And I think if you use technical analysis, you know that it's got a lot of caveats and you have to be very careful with it. And here's a stock, and these are the cues, just trading in chop. There's absolutely no way of determining the future direction and price based on any technical analysis. It's just moving in an absolute chaotic way. We're going to throw all that away to a large extent. And we're only going to look to catalyst events with a 91% win rate or better. That is, we have looked at all the phase 2 clinical data and have made a decision that the chance of success on the particular medicine we're examining is at least 91%. Now, I like to look at 96%, 97%, 98%. Now, that number is not arbitrary. It's the numbers that we come up with when the four of us, the three professors and myself, meet. We do look at the technicals, but essentially, mostly, we look at the fundamental drivers that's going to push the FDA to give a thumbs up on the medication that we are going to be investing in, and that's hopefully going to get an FDA approval. And we have to do an enormous amount of background work because a lot of medicines come up every month before the FDA and get a thumbs down. And there are going to be some thumbs up that we just miss. But when we find a stock that we believe has a really high chance of approval, we're going to be in it. Now, I'm going to give you just a few examples right up front. The first with BioXcel, the ticker is BTAI. And I'm just going to go over it really quickly. These are the ones I'm going to go over just to give you a quick synopsis. The trades that are open to you and available to you to trade, whether you come aboard or not, are the ones I'm going to go into a little more detail. Now, BXCL501 was their orally dissolving thin film formulation of dexmedetomidine for the potential treatment of agitation in patients with mild to moderate Alzheimer's disease. Now, the stock had been previously crushed when irregularities were discovered in data filed by one of the principal investigators. Now, we weren't in the trade at the time, but the major issue involved a serious adverse event in which the FDA was not notified on a timely basis of the occurrence. The FDA brought that to the attention of investors, and the stock really, I think it dropped about 80% in value. And then it was determined that all the serious events in which the FDA was not notified on a timely basis occurred in patients receiving placebo, not the active drug. So it rendered the study effective and useful, and that was acknowledged by the FDA. Now, the compound itself had stellar phase 2 results. And I'm going to go through that process of what is a phase 1 trial, what is a phase 2, what is a phase 3, what is a phase 4, just so that you can become an informed investor. We were in the stock got approved. Here's Biotech. It went from $5.88. We traded an option. It went up 331%. We traded the stock. It went up 102% on the approval of the thin film formulation. Now, obviously what we're doing is we're getting into stocks that treat serious medical illnesses. So, you can't sort of gloat over the fact that we are looking at really people who are suffering, but the thin film formulation has to be utilized by these patients for life. And we all know that these are very, very pricey medicines. I mean, everyone complains about them. And if you come aboard, I'm going to give you a webinar, just educational for members only, on how much money it takes to take one medicine, produce the molecule in the laboratory, and then ultimately take it through all the hurdles that are provided by the FDA and actually get it approved so it's available in the pharmacy to doctors. It's an incredibly inexpensive event, and well over 95% of those compounds never see the light of day. So the fact that the medicines are often priced exceedingly high to us as investors is very advantageous. This unfortunately is a medicine that needs to be taken for life. So it's going to provide a huge amount of free cash flow to this company. We were in it and up we went. Now the second one is Verrica Pharmaceuticals. It was one of my favorite plays recently. We just traded it, I think, about 2 months ago. Verrica is Latin for warts, and it's an interesting name for the company. But what they do is they produce Ycanth. It was a proprietary drug for the treatment of molluscum contagiosum, which is a viral-induced skin infection that gives you these round painless bumps as well as common warts. Now, it causes anogenital warts. Now, when they occur, right now, they're essentially untreatable. They cause a significant amount of morbidity. Obviously, they don't kill anybody. They have the potential to be precancerous because there's a constant inflammatory process going on in the anogenital area. So this is really a lot more serious of an affliction than you might think of. This is one of the 3 most common skin diseases that are seen by dermatologists today. And we're going to look at medicines that are fast-tracked and usually have no current therapy existing. That is going to give the FDA a tremendous impetus to get this medicine on, approved and out into the pharmacies if the phase 2 trials show significant efficacy. Well, the stock got approved. This one I kind of thought was a gimme. And I'm gonna tell you, we get some gimmies. The phase 2 studies were outstanding. And remember, this isn't a complex assessment that needs to be made. It's not like we're looking at a leukemia or a lymphoma, a central nervous system tumor. In those, clinical assessment is difficult. This is simply regression and ultimate cure of an anogenital wart or a wart located any place on the body. The phase 2 studies were absolutely outstanding. I truly believe that this was going to be approved. We gave it a 99% chance of approval. The option retraded went up 109% on the approval. Now, emergent biosciences, and this is what I call the gimme trade. I mean, this is sort of, every now and then we do get a trade where I would recommend to load up the truck. I'm never going to tell you that in the newsletter that you're going to get, because asset allocation is really based on your trading account size. But they put in a request by the FDA to approve Narcan as an over-the-counter medicine. Prior to this approval, Narcan was only available by prescription. And if you know that Narcan is an opioid antagonist, we have opioid receptors in the brain, and that's where fentanyl, morphine, all opioid derivatives bind. Now, we've actually developed them over a period of millions of years of evolution, because that's where endorphins bind. You know, and endorphins are the natural chemical that is produced by the body when the body comes under significant stress via pain. Endorphins are sky high in women who are in labor. And if you undergo significant pain, you break a leg, you have peritonitis, you're going to produce endorphins, and those endorphins are going to reduce pain naturally. So those receptors are there to bind to endorphins. Unfortunately, our country is awash in fentanyl. Heroin use is up, and all the opioids from fentanyl down to simple codeine is up. So I thought this was a gimme. There was no way that a medicine that has been in use intravenously for a very long time was going to get a thumbs down by the FDA to be used as an over-the-counter medicine. Of course, it did get approved. I considered it a gimme. I really plowed a lot of money into this trade. Now, nothing is 100%, but this is as close to 100% as you'll ever see. This one went up 173% on the announcement. Now, EBS is tailed way off, and I'm watching it retrace, and when it hits a certain level, we're going to buy it again. Now, the reason it goes up on the Catalyst news, obviously, is a ton of traders pile into it on what is really a tremendously powerful thumbs up. But remember, at the time, the money that's going to come into the company from the over-the-counter approval is not yet going to hit the bottom line. So the company is most commonly retraces, hits a certain level, consolidates, and then going into either the next quarter or the quarter after that, money starts to flow into the company from that approval, and we can oftentimes get back in and trade it, anticipating a great quarterly announcement. But we took our 173% and we walked. And then quickly, I'm going to go over Cohero Biosciences, another huge winner. They did a medicine called Udenkaya. It was an auto injector, and what it did was the auto injector itself was proprietary and had an FDA approval. What it did was it's implantable in your skin, and it consistently or constantly measures the number of white blood cells you have. Now, these are patients undergoing chemotherapy. They may have a leukemia or underlying lymphoma where their white blood cells fall to a critical level. Remember that you need 500 neutrophils per cubic millimeter of blood in order to be able to effectively fight infection. This auto injector would measure that, and every time that white blood cell count or neutrophil count fell below 500 cells per cubic millimeter of blood, it injected you automatically with Udenkaya, and it brought you above that critical level where you are unable to fight bacterial infections. White blood cells, for the most part, are there to fight bacteria. antibodies, there's cellular mediated immunity, and there's humoral mediated immunity, cellular or white blood cells, monocytes, macrophages. They do help fight parasitic infections. And then humoral immunity, like the COVID vaccine, is really an antibody producer, and that's a separate arm of the immune system. But this is critical in these patients. And this was close to a gimme. I didn't want to label it as one, but it did get approved, and we got a 104% winner on the option. Now, these are all trades that we took. These are not hypotheticals, and the percentage I'm giving you is the real percentage we made on the trade. Now, the last one, I guess I'm going to show you one more, is Lantheus Holdings. Now, this is not a catalyst trading event. Actually, it is in a sense, but we don't have a catalyst date yet. The European Union needs to approve their cardiac and cardiovascular imaging platform. Now, if you've noticed, you haven't learned a whole lot about trading options here. What you've learned is how to grab trades that are going to provide you with a tremendous amount of equity. And that's really the name of the game. I mean, most of these trades, as I mentioned, are going to be options trades. When we have to, we will take the trade with the stock. But Lantheus, their cardiac and cardiovascular imaging platform is revolutionary. It's made stress testing and angiography of the heart, where dye is injected to see whether the coronary arteries are open and not clogged up with cholesterol plaques, almost non-existent. It's not used anymore. This shows blood flow through the coronary arteries, the carotid arteries. It is a next era imaging platform. It's already been FDA approved in the United States. What's the likelihood that the European Union won't approve it? The problem is we don't have a date. I wanted to get in this trade early because the lack of a date really didn't daunt me. So here's what I did. We got in early and we had to buy the stock. It was unfortunate. It was 70 bucks a share, but it went right to 100. Now we sold 1/2 of our position and made 42%. Now we're holding the other half. Now the stock has really drifted back right underneath 70. So we're still holding 50% of our stock, and we're waiting for that EU approval. There's still been no date announced, but this is still a tremendous stock. We've cashed half of it out. Some traders may have cashed out all of it. I don't know. My recommendation was to take half off the table. We booked it at 42% when it hit 100. We're still holding on to it. Now, even if you can only buy 100 shares, in this particular case, that's $7,000. Even if you can only buy 50 shares or 20 shares, your return on investment, your ROI, which is all that matters, is going to be extraordinarily high. Now, I did another one because I wanted to show you the effectiveness of the system. Now, remember, this really isn't a system. This is just an enormous amount of background work. Here's a Lasix auto injector. Now, probably a lot of you, I would say almost all of you, are not familiar with Lasix. Lasix is really, I think, the most powerful diuretic available to doctors. It works on the distal tubule of the kidney, and it makes you create an enormous amount of urine. So if you're volume overloaded, if you have too much water in the body, the auto injector is going to sense that, and it's going to give you a shot of Lasix. Now, Lasix is used in the hospital all the time on a discretionary basis. And a lot of patients on Lasix are in the intensive care unit. Now, you're only going to get volume overloaded if you have you're in cardiac failure. Now, these are patients who have a heart that pumps just marginally. Now, every time the heart loads with blood, 70 to 80% of the blood in the heart should be injected by the heart muscle. If the heart muscle gets continually damaged, and it doesn't have to be necessarily by a heart attack, it could be by a viral infection that causes a cardiomyopathy, it could be by the COVID vaccine, which caused cardiomyopathy and myocarditis. But if the heart muscle gets damaged, your ejection fraction is going to fall, and when it falls to a critical level, you're going to continually get volume overloaded. Now, cardiac failure is really an end stage process. At this point, it's only a matter, unfortunately, of time before you either get a heart transplant or you're going to expire. The only issue is the quality of life you have and the amount of time you spend out of the hospital. Let me see if I put any of those metrics in here. I didn't. But what the furosemide autoinjector did was it kept patients with borderline cardiac function out of the hospital to a statistically significant degree. It also extended their lives to a statistically significant degree. So if you used it, you had a longer life, and the life that was extended had a much better quality. Now remember, when you're kept out of the intensive care unit or kept out of a step-down unit, you save the government millions and millions of dollars, because almost all of these patients are on Medicare, and Medicare has to pay the hospitalization. So there's a lot of impetus for the FDA to approve this medicine. Anyway, this medicine was just stellar in phase 2 trials. It got approved. We got 184% winner. You can see right here the approval date on the right edge. Look at that stock. It took a geometric move to the upside. We got in early and it just kind of didn't do very much. It took a step up, consolidation, and then the FDA approval, and it just skyrocketed. Remember, a skyrocketing stock that moves up geometrically is going to increase in implied volatility. It's going to expand the value of the options, and we're going to get a really juicy winner. Now, let me just quickly run down the process for you. So if you come aboard, and I hope you will, because I truly believe we can create a really nice success for you. We've been doing this now for 3 years. We go from drug discovery in the laboratory. Now, at this point, this is not an FDA, has no government oversight. You can go in there and you can do whatever you want in the lab. And in preclinical development, it's unfortunate, but you can do anything you want in terms of rat studies, mice studies, unfortunately, even in some cases, dog studies. I've seen, unfortunately, work done on dogs. It really is it really pulls at your heart. But if it saves thousands of lives a year, it's unfortunate, but it's necessary. But at this point, since it's not used in humans, there's no oversight. I mean, the oversight is PETA, who always screams on television that all of this stuff is really inhumane. And I'm just sort of going off on a tangent here. But I just want you to understand, in preclinical development, you've got a molecule, you think it's going to be effective based on your modeling, and you're going to put it in preclinical development. Then you're going to apply for an investigational new drug application. It comes under the scrutiny of the FDA, and now you have to adhere to very strict standards and government regulations. Now, usually government regulations stink, quite frankly. I'm not a big government oversight proponent, but in this particular case, these oversights are important. So You go to early clinical phase 1 trials, these can be done in humans because the FDA has approved the drug as a new investigational, potentially therapeutic medicine. The early phase 1 trials are simply to look at dosing and safety, not at efficacy. And the patients that are recruited are paid money. I mean, if you have a good heart, good kidneys, you're in fairly good health, and you don't have any money, these are how people accrue significant amount of loot. They know how to plug themselves into these trials. Obviously, they're taking a risk in taking an early clinical phase 1 trial. A lot of these are intravenous. They have to come back and be monitored and allow the study to take a lot of blood work, but they get paid pretty handsomely for it. If the phase 1 trial is promising, the company on its own can move forward with an early clinical phase 2 trial. Now, a phase 2 trial is our catalyst event. And that's where the study looks at not only the dosing interval and safety, but at the efficacy of the medicine. How effective is this medicine in treating the target illness? These are the studies that we read either via a Nexus Lexis search that we do at the University of Miami School of Medicine library, or via PubMed, which I have a subscription to, which is active on my computer. I mean, usually I just go to PubMed, but let me tell you, I do a lot of Nexus Lexis searches at the University of Miami School of Medicine. Then we sit down, myself and the 3 professors, we compare notes, and we decide which medicines we're going to invest in, and then we're going to throw them out to you. Now, a clinical phase 3 trial is really not one that we're really going to pay that much attention to. It's usually a placebo-controlled study. In some cases, we need them, but for the medicines that we look at, we oftentimes don't, because we're looking at medicines that have no other competitor drug. There's no way to do a head-to-head, and there's no reason to do a placebo-controlled if the phase 2 studies are simply outstanding. Now, I didn't even put up phase 4, but that's where you do a head-to-head trial versus another effective medicine. We don't care about the phase 4s. They're not catalyst events. The clinical phase 3 is usually not a catalyst event, except in very specific instances. We're going to be looking at the clinical data on the phase 2, because that's where the company is going to go to the FDA and apply for approval. So they're going to get an NDA application. We're going to get a PDUFA date. Now, I'm going to show you what PDUFA stands for. I've been doing this for 3 years, and I can never remember what PDUFA stands for, and what it stands for is pretty irrelevant. But when we get the PDUFA date, we know when the FDA is going to come out with their thumbs up, thumbs down decision, like Caesar, who stands up in the Coliseum, and the gladiator's got his sword up, and he gives his thumbs up or thumbs down, and that's going to let us know whether the medicine is going to wind up in the pharmacy and in the hands of clinicians. Now, I'm just going to go over really briefly again this trial, because I really want you to understand it. We're going to do bi-weekly live events where we're going to go over the medicines that the FDA is looking at. I'm gonna review the medicines that are any open positions we have, and sort of bring you up to date on a lot of the clinical information. Although the newsletter is very, very detailed and provides you with a tremendous amount of clinical information, all of which you ultimately can ignore. I mean, you don't have to become a physiologist, a biologist, a neurologist, a cardiologist in order to take these trades. So just for your own information, I want you to understand the rationale that we use for taking the medicine. And this is really giving you a nice example. Now, probably very few of you know that gastric ulcers in adults and children really don't have any effective therapy. 80% of them are induced by a bacteria called Helicobacter pylori. Now, the medicine that's currently in use called amoxicillin, which is simply a derivative of ampicillin, which is a derivative of penicillin, does eradicate the bacteria, but within 90 days, the bacteria is back. And the bacteria causes significant ulcers in the stomach and about 20% of the time in the duodenum. And it's really a very relevant clinical issue because a lot of these ultimately mature to full-fledged gastric cancer. So it's a big issue, and it's something that you want to stop. Now, you always look for political components to it. It's unfortunate, but we need to. But this is seen preferentially in indigent people. The lower socioeconomic group in this country has a much higher incidence of gastric ulcers that are Helicobacter pylori induced. Therefore, the FDA has a lot of political pressure, unfortunately, to approve this medicine. So there's the Helicobacter in a Petri dish in preclinical studies. And I'm going to do this pretty quickly because I don't want to bog you down in this information. The company is simply going to drop antibiotic impregnated discs onto the bacteria, and they're going to look at zone of clearing. And the biggest zone of clearing is going to be the antibiotic that has the most effectiveness in a Petri dish in preclinical studies. Now, this oftentimes does not translate into clinical efficacy, which is why we have to do these trials. Now, they're going to apply to the FDA for an IND for a new drug application. And the IND application works as the bridge between animal studies and human studies. And if the FDA is satisfied with the preclinical trials, they like the data they see, they're going to give it an IND. And now it's going to get approval to be used in humans under really strict supervision by the FDA. Now, companies adhere to this because, believe me, I have yet to see a company that doesn't adhere to the strict rules of human testing. So phase 1, as I mentioned, is a safety and potential dosage scheduling study. It does not look at efficacy. Now, what phase 1 studies can do is provide information that allows the company to apply for fast track status. Now, we are going to preferentially look at medicines that have been fast tracked. Now, fast track medicines usually have no current effective therapy. And there's one that I'm going to show you that's an open tray that you're going to be able to take at the end of this webinar. And you can go right to your computer and lock it in. And it is a groundbreaking medicine to treat pediatric tumors. It's got fast track status, and it's also got orphan drug status. A lot of these tumors have no effective therapy. So we look for fast track status and we look for orphan drug status. That skyrockets the chances that the FDA is going to approve the medicine. Also, at this point, the FDA takes the company under their wing and gives them guidance as to exactly the sample size they want, the criteria, the clinical criteria they want monitored. It kind of babies the study through the process. So when it ultimately comes to them, it doesn't get rejected for flaws in the clinical design of the study. And that is always a problem that we have to be careful of. And it comes up from time to time. The phase 1 study, as I mentioned, is really a safety and dosage study. Now, in phase 2, this is our catalyst event. We look at the efficacy and side effects. Now, if it's a fast-tracked orphan drug medicine, the FDA is going to tell the company how many patients they want to see in this study. which is of tremendous benefit. Now, in this particular case, the medicine in use healed the peptic ulcer, whether it was in the stomach or in the duodenum, to a statistically significant degree. I mean, a tremendous number of these ulcers healed. And after 90 days and 180 days of follow-up, there was no recurrence of the ulcer. The problem with amoxicillin is within 90 days, you get a tremendous recurrence rate. Within 180 days, almost all the ulcers are back and Helicobacter pylori associated again. So based on the phase 2 results, which are clinical studies looking at efficacy, obviously you have to look at potential side effects. You're going to do it on up to several hundred people, and this may take 2 to 3 years to complete, and it's a very expensive study. Remember that everybody who undergoes this study has to get upper endoscopy. They have to have a tube passed into their stomach. Biopsies have to be taken, and that same tube can reach the duodenum. Biopsies have to be taken and shown that the ulcers are not only healed, but the Helicobacter pylori organism is gone. This is a very, very expensive study. It costs millions of dollars to do it. Now, you're going to see we got an FDA approval on the medicine, and we made really nice money. I'm just using this here to show you the process. Now, if it goes to phase 3, you're going to go to hundreds to thousands of patients. And you look at efficacy and side effects, and you look at statistical significance. In the 2 cohorts, usually you get a treatment arm and a placebo-controlled arm. Sometimes the FDA requires it. In the case of most of our medicines, they don't, because of their orphan drug and fast track status. They want to get them out. We see they're effective. We see that they have minimal side effects, and there's no drug out there that can treat the illness. So they're going to give it an FDA approval, put it in the pharmacy based on phase 2 trials. If they're a bigger pain in the neck, and there may be a couple of other medicines out there already that are effective to treat it, only you think you have a more effective treatment, and we've looked at those, and they are very tough to do. And I really stay away from phase 3 trials. And oftentimes they're not really relevant triggers. So we're still looking at fast track status, looking at orphan drug status, and we're looking at medicines in which now, if there's no long-term effective therapy, you don't need a phase 3 trial. Then finally, we go to the phase 4, and that's a double-blind, placebo-controlled study involving hundreds to thousands of patients. This you're going to need in a medicine that has multiple additional medicines. Like if you want to get an approval for a drug like simvastatin, to lower cholesterol. Well, there are 6, 7, or 8 medicines that are currently approved. In order to get approval, you're going to have to do double-blind, placebo-controlled studies and show that your medicine offers some kind of clinical, significantly relevant improvement to what's out there already. We don't even bother to look at phase 4 trials. So what we pay close attention to, though, is fast track designation. We want the FDA to fast track our medicine. Now, the FDA is going to respond within 60 days of the request to become a fast track medicine. To qualify for fast track, a new drug has to treat a debilitating or life-threatening condition. You can think of AIDS, cancer, diabetes, epilepsy. Obviously, there's a ton more. It has to fill an unmet medical need. Unmet medical need can be a treatment for a condition that was previously incurable. It can also mean developing a new treatment that is faster, more effective, less risky, or more practical. A great example of that is that Udenkaya auto-injector with Lasix. LASIK has been around forever. I think LASIK has been around for almost 40 years, but it has to be given by intermittent intravenous squirts. You have to be in the hospital already. You already have to be in volume overload and in congestive heart failure. By using that auto injector, it keeps you out of the hospital. It keeps you at home. It keeps you healthy. It keeps you well. So it was a novel way, a more effective and less risky way for using a medicine that already had been FDA approved, I believe, 4 decades ago. The fast track designation now really is tremendously advantageous. The FDA meets with the company very frequently. There's expedited correspondence, automatic application for accelerated approval and priority review. And the rolling review process allows the company to get frequent feedback from the FDA on how the medicine is doing, how they view the clinical study. It's really a tremendous advantage. So we look for fast track medicines. We look for orphan drug status. Most of the recommendations we make are going to have a 95 or greater % chance of success. The chance of success is really a subjective assessment based on myself and the 3 professors who I work with at the School of Medicine. Now, the PDUFA decision, let me see here. The PDUFA acronym stands for Prescription Drug Use Free Act, which went into effect in 1992. You don't have to remember it. I can't even remember it because it's really irrelevant. The only thing we need to know is that the PDUFA date is the date that the FDA is going to give a thumbs up or thumbs down on the medicine. And that is your catalyst event. If they are going to come up with a PDUFA date based off of a phase 2 trial on a fast-tracked orphan drug medicine, we are sitting very pretty if we're in the medication. Now, just this fast-track status is enough of a catalyst to raise the value of the stock. Now, a CRL, I just want to let you know, is something that we absolutely never want to see. A CRL is called a complete response letter and describes all the specific deficiencies that the FDA has identified in the application. And essentially, it doesn't have to be the death knell for the medicine, but it's going to blow up our options position. If we're in the stock, we may stick in the stock depending upon the reason for the CRL. Now, sometimes the CRL is of minor importance. Investors bail out. If we're in the stock, we stay. But oftentimes, the CRL is sort of the nail in the coffin. And it's something that we just don't ever want to see. So I'm going to look at these are some of our older trades. This is Novavax. This was a 2022 medicine. RSV received fast track designation for their respiratory syncytial virus vaccine. It was an orphan drug fast track medicine. There was no vaccine for respiratory syncytial virus, which really affects the pediatric population. Adults rarely get RSV, and it took the medicine up 125% in value. The option 364%. Here's Regeneron. This was Eylea. This was a breakthrough therapy. There had been no treatment for macular degeneration. The macula of the eye is where the rods and cones are densest. It's responsible for our 20/20 vision. You know that senile macular degeneration is a huge problem. It's a normal, it's you know, dry senile macular degeneration is just a normal process of aging, and you lose your 20/20 vision, and you can go all the way down to light perception. Eylea was the breakthrough therapy for this problem. It got approved. It was 55% on the stock. We only, you know, I would have thought we would have made more on the option. It only went up 157%. On Clovis Oncology, Rubraca was a major breakthrough in ovarian cancer. It was not orphan drug. There were other chemotherapies available. This had much less side effect. It treated ovarian metastasis better, and the ovaries tend to metastasize to bone and brain, and you want to avoid that at all costs. Rubraca did it. It got accelerated approval, fast track status, 120% on the stock, 302% on the option. United Therapeutics, pediatric brain tumor. This is Unituxin, and this is for a glioblastoma. It's mostly seen in the pediatric age group. It was the kind of tumor that actually killed John McCain. Irrespective of his politics, you don't want to see anybody die from this. It's a horrific way to die. There is no surgical way to really help out. Doing brain surgery to decrease the bulk of the tumor is occasionally done to extend life, but ultimately this is a problem that's going to lead to death. But Unituxin slows that down and increases your quality of life, especially in children. It got fast track status. It only popped United Therapeutics 15%. We got 57% on the option. Now, I'm going to give you I want to show you what the kind of information you're going to receive in the newsletter. So I want to show you a few newsletters. Now, here's Amylyx, and this is what I write. Amylyx is a clinical stage biopharmaceutical company that is developing a novel therapeutic, which is AMX0035 for the treatment of amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. Now, if you remember that ALS is what killed Lou Gehrig, it had no treatment whatsoever at the time that Amylyx came out with this medicine. Now, ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease, is a progressive neurological disease that causes a loss of nervous system input to muscles. And ultimately, what you die of is you die of a respiratory failure, because you do not have the ability to move your diaphragm. And even though you may be on a ventilator, ultimately you give out and you die of respiratory failure. It's a horrific way to die because it's a wasting disease that ultimately puts you in the hospital. And the hospital, you ultimately never leave. Now, Amylyx is 0035 proprietary combination. I can't even pronounce these medicines. I know it's sodium phenylbutyrate. I'm not going to try to pronounce the first one. It's not really important. Dosed in a synergistic way, blocked mitochondrial stress, which is really the ultimate bottom line for the cause of ALS. And here's the approval. And this is a 147% winner on the option. These are real trades. These are not theoretical. These are all trades we were in and all trades I took in my real money account. If I give them out to you, I trade them myself. Now, I give you one more. This is Amicus. This, to skip a lot over, this is a glycogen storage disease. It occurs in babies and children. Very few of them live to be adults. I could have posted pictures in the newsletter, but they're so awful to see. These children are totally wasted and debilitated. And the problem is that, all the food that we take in is ultimately broken down to glucose. And glucose is then stored as a polymer known as glycogen. And the glycogen is stored in these vacuoles that go into muscle. Now, if you have Pompey's disease, you lack the enzyme to reverse the process, break the vacuoles, get into the glycogen and break it back down to glucose so that we can use it for metabolism. Now, there's usually not a total lack of GAA. You have some ability, but the storage vacuoles tend to accumulate. It leads to muscle wasting, and it ultimately leads to death. So the FDA set up two PDUFA dates. One's for Amicus's NDA for ATGAA, which for Pompey's, and a second for the company's BLA for ATGAA on July 29, 2022. The stock was in a tailspin at the time we took the trade, which to me made it even more attractive. Now I didn't put in this tailspin, but it had come way down. And here's the move up on the approval. I didn't put in the percentage, but we made really nice money on this trade. Now here's our 2022 performance. Now I just put in the stock. I didn't put in the options performance. I just wanted you to see how much money we made on the stock. We had 20 trades and we had 18 winners. Now we have many, many more trades in 2022. Now these are the 3 trades that I'm going to give you, whether you come aboard or not. Now the first one already closed, and it just closed a couple of days ago. I was going to throw it out to you, but it was for Effextra for tumors and enhanced therapeutic potential of anti-cancer drugs that fail to eliminate residual disease in cancer stem cells. The stock, we got it at $1.35. We closed it at $2. It just rocketed up. We got that 49% in 48 hours. And, you know, I'm a very conservative trader. I recommended to close the trade. I should have taken half off the table and let half, leave half out there hanging. I didn't. I'm sure some investors decided to hold on. I asked for them to send me back emails. The stock went to over $3.50 in 10 days. So we left a lot of money on the table. If you were in it at $1.35 and you closed out anywhere over $3, you got yourself close to a 300% winner. We left a lot of money on the table. Now, the 2 that I'm recommending for you to take, the first one is Occupier Pharma. It's a September 28th call. I'll give you the full position in a second. Now, Nixol is a treatment to treat mydriasis, and the mydriasis is medicine-induced. You're on a medicine that you have to take. What it may do is dilate your pupils 24 hours a day. You cannot have that. Now, if you're like me, you're not 25 years old, you know that night driving is tough or tougher because there's a lot more blurring associated with night driving. When you look at headlights, they tend to have a lot more glare and they tend to be less distinct. That's because your pupils are dilated and the peripheral light that comes in from the circumference of the pupil is very difficult to translate into vision by the occipital lobe of the brain. So you get a lot of indistinct vision, and it drops 20/20 vision way down. If you're already at 2200 to 2400, your night driving may be prohibited. I believe that there's close to, I think it's a 96%. I actually have it right here in front of me. I printed it out for my own edification. I'll tell you the chance of approval of this medicine, and I will give you the trade. I promised you I would, and the chance of approval here is 99% chance of success. Between myself and the 3 professors, we believe this has a 99%, and we rarely designate a medicine 99% chance of success. Now, the option chain has essentially no volume. There's no open interest. You're going to have to buy the stock. So you're going to buy, whoops, I'm sorry. Oh, geez. Let me go back here. This is Occupier. It's a $4 buy limit. So if you can buy it for $4 or less, you've got a September 28th, 2023 PDUFA date. This is really going to skyrocket the price of this company, because once you start the medicine, you're going to be on it for life, and they're going to price it very high. The second PDUFA date is on Tovor. I can't. It's hard for me to pronounce the medicines. Tovorafenib. Now it's for pediatric low grade gliomas and other tumors. This is a tremendously effective drug. I'll just give you our chance of approval on it. It is a 96% chance of approval. And just to really quickly tell you, it's a RAF2 kinase inhibitor. Now, the RAF2 enzymes play a role in cell cycle regulation, cell proliferation, differentiation, cell survival, and apoptosis. So when the RAF kinases become low in level, that's when you get the escape of certain cellular lines that develop into tumors. This inhibits that, and the phase 2 trials were outstanding, not only in the prevention of pediatric tumors, but in the treatment of pediatric tumors that were already full blown. Now, this has some very unique status, and I have to find it in my notes, and I'll tell you in a second what it is, and why it's got such a very, very high chance of approval. I just look at so many medicines that it becomes very difficult for me to keep all of this data under my thumb. And remember, I'm not a professor of medicine, but on day one here, let me just skip this. It's got a huge pipeline of other medications. I just want to let you know that. And the unique thing about it is it's a rare medicine. It's got what's called pediatric fast track status. The FDA does not believe that enough medicines are coming out to treat pediatric tumors. So this has a tremendous chance of approval. Now, low-grade gliomas or other tumors in the pediatric population are rapidly fatal. And gliomas, glioblastomas, to take the long name, again, is what killed John McCain, but is most prevalent in kids. There are other tumors too. There's central nervous system lymphomas and a whole bunch of other cell types that this is effective to. Now, you're going to buy the October 15, 2023 $15 call. I believe that you can get it for a little cheaper than $110. I'm not sure, but I recommend it. You're going to sell to close the first half of your options at $165. The second half of your options we're going to leave open, and hopefully we can take those up to 200 or 300%. Those are the two trades that I'm throwing out to you right now. Jot them down. If you don't decide to come aboard, they're yours. And I'm telling you, they have a very, very high chance of approval. They're being traded in the portfolio. I have money invested in both. And I am very much engaged here. Let me move on. So here's our track record for the year. We have 29 trades. We have 23 winners and 6 losers. That's exactly an 80% win rate. And we have some enormous winners. 125%, 110%, 129%, 109%. Now, most of our losers are full losers because when the FDA gives a thumbs down, they blow up on us. There's nothing we can do about it. But when we get a winner, we oftentimes get a runner. Now, I didn't put in the last few trades that I showed you on the slides. So we have a few more winners than I have here, and I think we have 31 closed trades, and the trades that I left out are both winners. So we're trading at above an 80% win rate. It's one additional. It's the one that I closed out with a 49 or 50% winner that went on to go up even higher, and that was a medicine to treat central nervous system tumors. So this rate is going to provide you with a tremendously positive equity curve. Now, I'm going to let you know when I feel that we've got sort of a gimme trade, but you do what you want with it and be very careful with it. I can never guarantee you a winner, and I don't want to give anyone the impression that I do. But there are just some trades that are so likely to be approved. I take every trade with a fixed amount of money, but I will double the amount of money on a gimme trade. I will double my risk to double my potential profit. Now, I don't think any other trade has the predictive power. Now, in previous years, we've traded up to a 91% win rate. In 2022, I didn't calculate the percentage, but we had 20 trades, we had 18 winners. Let me tell you what that percentage is. I didn't bother to put it in here, but I have my phone open, and it's 20 divided by 18. Well, no, it's not. It's 18 divided by 20. That's a 90% win rate. So in 2022, we traded at 90%. 2023, we're trading at 80, but we're not done. And the two trades I threw out there, I believe are going to evolve into winners. And it's going to push our percentage even higher. And I believe we'll close the year very close to 90%. Now, I've got a million testimonials. Blockbuster Biotech Alert is just what I've been looking for. I get my trades each week from Mark. Now, Sunday night is our flagship newsletter. It's the one I put the most time in. It's usually where I throw out new trades, but you're going to get intra-week updates all the time. I mean, I send out so many newsletters. If you could get writer's cramp on a keyboard, I would have it. After a 40% increase to my account within the first 2 months, I'm a member for life. Thanks, Mark. Your professional guidance has been amazing. And remember, every 2 weeks, we're going to do a live session where you get your questions answered. And you know, I get a lot of feedback from traders who throw medicines out to me that I have not looked at. Now, oftentimes, we have looked at them and we've discarded them for one reason or another. But every now and then, I get a medicine that we have just not really focused on. And occasionally, we will use it. So I really like that feedback. And you can email me anytime at info@rightlinetraining.com for any questions about the trades. I gave Barks Biotech Service a try. I have to say that he surely knows his stuff when it comes to biotech companies. I sort of have become pretty proficient in it after doing this for 3 years. His first 3 trades were all over 100%. Thanks you, Mark. You're truly a gifted trader. And it's really, you know what? It's not the trading. It's really the underlying fundamental information that we have. Now, I do format the options trade at the best strike and the best expiration date. I look at open interest. It tells me where most traders are sitting, at what strike price, and at what expiration date. And that's what these 3 professors need me for. They want me to optimize the information they provide me to provide them with the most money that they can get. I mean, I translate their information into really nice trades. I let them know when we can't take an option. They're going to have to buy the stock. And between the 4 of us, we've made really great money. I'm so thankful I connected with Mark and the whole team at Right Line. In 2 short months, I've grown my account 205% with this Biotech Blockbuster Alert service. I told all of my friends and relatives it's well worth the annual cost. Now here's, it's normally 3,997 per year. And the first 20 get 3 PDFs that I wrote and spent a lot of time on, and they're going to give you really, really nice investments that I've looked at, and we include the bi-weekly small biotech updates. But I'm going to give you a discount, and what we're going to do is it's $9.97 per year. It's normally $39.97, and it's $2.97 per quarter, normally $7.49. Now, I believe one of those 2 trades that I sent you, I believe both will hit. Even if only one of 2 hit and the other one's a loser, you'll pay for the yearly subscription right there. I mean, I think they're both going to hit, quite frankly. I think they're both going to evolve into winners. So it's up to you whether you want to come aboard. For the first 20, you're going to get the first bonus is tiny companies, a tiny company buying a $4 trillion medical revolution. It's Apple's chip maker poised to dominate healthcare. It's already gone up quite a bit, but there's still a lot of upside. And just to give you a little bit of hint, eventually telemedicine is going to be expanded. I always look at Teladoc for nice entry points, because the future is in telemedicine. The problem with telemedicine is that currently we can't transmit electronically an EKG, the electrical activity of your heart, your pulse, your blood glucose, sodium, potassium, chloride, liver enzymes, your SGOT, SGPT, your alkaline phosphatase, all these critical blood levels that doctors need to make a distinctive diagnosis and determine whether or not they can treat you with much more complex therapies than you can get now via telemedicine, which ultimately really consists of Viagra and Cialis. Well, that's not going to stand pat. When we move forward, I mean, most of the world does not have access to primary care physicians. I mean, most of the continent of Africa does not. In Asia, in Thailand, in the Philippines, in Vietnam, in these countries, you have to travel hours just to get to a primary care doctor. I believe that telemedicine is really going to wash the world over, change the way we do medicine, and that's what I based bonus 1 and bonus 2 on. Bonus 3 is our live updates that we're going to do, where we're going to sit together and we are going to talk about it. Now, the offer does not expire at midnight. You're going to have, today is Friday. You're going to have, I think, till Saturday night to make your decision. But, it's totally up to you. Now, I'm going to answer any questions that there are. We have quite a few subscribers already. And I'll tell you, once you join the service, it's going to be like a narcotic, because you are not going to drop it, because we pull winners. Let me go back to the questions here. Let me find them. Just had them up and it popped right back into this thing. Here we go. Okay. Did they go through all these steps with the COVID vaccines? No, John, they did not. They didn't go through any of these steps with the COVID vaccine, which is why I tell you that politics plays a role. I mean, there was no prospective study over a 12-month period or 18-month period to determine the efficacy and safety of the COVID vaccines. If that had happened, they would have never been released. With the incidence of myocarditis that's seen and potentially other side effects, like I wouldn't let my son get the COVID vaccine. I mean, he's 22 years old. I got it because I didn't know of the downside, and I'm ancient. But if I would have known of these side effects, I would have not gotten it either. I mean, I would have just distanced myself. We now know that the masks are useless. I mean, people have to have these cloth pieces of paper over their face All they do is accumulate nasal secretions. They get wet around your lips, and they actually have a negative effect on your respiratory tract. So wearing these masks is a big negative. So it's just all information that we hadn't accrued yet. I mean, Anthony Fauci, I mean, I don't want to go over the top, should be put in front of a firing squad. I mean, this guy just stood behind this stuff with absolutely no clinical data to back up what he said. And I think it's a horrible situation. Now, we are going to be picking a new company that is rolling out a new COVID vaccine. Now, it is of a new generation. I haven't thrown it out there yet, but I'm looking at it. It is not an RNA-based medicine. Now, the RNA derivatives or the RNA manipulated vaccines that were provided by Moderna and Pfizer are the ones that had all the side effects. This is a completely unique vaccine. It's a recombinant vaccine that includes no RNA. So it's going to get approved, I'm telling you. It's just a matter of when, and I'm going to be throwing that out into this service very, very shortly. Right now it's hanging around, and the reason I'm holding off is it does not have a PDUFA date. They've applied for one. It has not yet come out. As soon as the PDUFA date does, we're going to hit that medicine. Hey, Rob. Listen. Rob says I'm getting depressed by all this stuff. Listen, here's the reason not to be depressed. These are all additional bullets that go into the gun of clinicians that allow people to have a better quality of life and a longer life on illnesses that they're going to acquire anyway. I mean, you have to positively spin it that way. I mean, if you get a glioma and you're 8 years old, I mean, ultimately you're going to wind up succumbing to it. But if you can live an additional 15 years and the quality of life you have really be good, that's a positive thing. So all these medicines do is that in the cases where they treat incurable illnesses, is they extend life and improve the quality of life. I mean, that's the best I can spin it for you. It's really unfortunate. We're looking at really, really tough illnesses. I mean, I'll just tell you right now, Iterum, ITRM, is a medicine that I'm looking at, is another company I'm looking at. I haven't pulled the trigger on it yet, and I'm not gonna for quite some time. It's looking at a breakthrough antibiotic that kills gram-negative organisms, the ones that mostly affect the urine, but also can cause septicemia, better than any antibiotic out there. And when it was looked at head-to-head with ciprofloxacin or Cipro, it beat it silly. But the FDA denied it because they wanted to see more data. Luckily, we didn't go in it because remember, I don't like to take trades on medicines that already have effective therapies. And this does have effective therapies. But now they're going head-to-head with multiple antibiotics. They just started their phase 3 trials on, they've enrolled a significant amount of patients, and I see some phase 2 data coming out that show that this antibiotic is better. We're going to be in that trade. And I'm just going to close by saying this. The forefront of medicine is on the immunological frontier. Ultimately, we're going to be treating tumors based upon our ability to manipulate the immune system, the ability to affect certain enzymes within the body. We're going to be treating most bacterial illnesses, not with antibiotics, but via immunological mechanisms. And there are companies out there well into the phase 2 study point that are coming up with very effective medicines we're watching. When they come up with a PDUFA date, you're going to be in them. So we have a lot of great things happening in medicine. And the forefront is really on the immunological front. And it affects every level of medicine. from cardiology, where it's used to treat myocarditis and cardiomyopathy, obviously to lupus, and all the collagen vascular diseases, to tumors, where if we can boost our immunological response against certain enzymes that are used to promote tumor replication, that's where the money is, and that's where a lot of these biotech companies are spending literally hundreds of millions of dollars on. Now, as investors, to close, it's unfortunate, and again, don't get depressed, Rob, these medicines have to be used for life. I mean, the medicine for amyotrophic lateral sclerosis is dosed frequently, and it's very expensive, but Medicare has to pick it up. And once Medicare picks it up, every HMO and PPO must pay for it. They cannot leave an orphan drug that treats a tumor that's Medicare reimbursable off their list. That's what we look for, and that's why we stay with fast-tracked orphan drugs for the most part. We know they're going to be government reimbursed, and that all the HMOs and PPOs will follow, and it's going to bring the company an enormous amount of additional money. So I just want to thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I hope you'll take advantage of the opportunity. Let me tell you, the trades, when I ultimately roll them out, are really easy to take. I'm going to give you a very, very detailed rationale for the trade, but the amount of background work that we do is just enormously high. I mean, we have to sift through a lot of medicines that, you know, have a 60 or 70% chance of approval and ultimately wind up getting denied. They go back to the drawing board and they come back, but to us as investors, they're big losers, and we're not going to take them. So we're going to look for 94, 95%, all the way up to 90 of 99% chance of approval, and very few of our medicines get denied. And I'll just close with this. We had a gimme last year, and I just showed the stock performance, but the option was up over 300%. What happened was, I can't even remember the name of the company. They made a Botox 2.0 medicine. And the reason it didn't get approved was because during COVID, the FDA did not have the ability to inspect